Hi all, let's continue our look at the evolution of chess style, and we're going to take a very bad time in world chess history, the World War II. So as you'd expect, most international chess activity completely ground to a halt. I think the last major tournament was the Hastings 1939-40 tournament. It's at December, January, hence the border of the 2 years. So after that international tournament, there were none held for obvious reasons. But if you look at the chessgames.com database, you'll see actually the USSR held still their national championships. There was some USSR championships. There was one in 1940, USSR championship in 1940. The absolute championship in 1941. And then there wasn't in 1942 or 1943 apparently, but there was in 1944 and 1945. One of the British chess magazines indicated this as well. It seems to indicate that in the USSR at first it wasn't. It was carrying on the chess. So a lot of the top chess players like Botvinnik could actually still be in training. And if we look at one of the games, for example, of the 1940 USSR Championship, there were a lot of good opponents playing against Botvinnik. For those interested in the historical background, by the way, why at first the USSR might not have had chess so much affected, on Wiki, and I'm going to quote this, Germany began World War II with a non-aggression pact with the USSR, after signing of which it quickly invaded Poland on September the 1st, 1939. The Soviet troops entered Poland on 17th September and also fought a peripheral war with Finland from November 1939 to March 1940. Then later it indicates in June 1941 Germany began an invasion of the Soviet Union, before which Stalin had ignored reports of a German invasion. Stalin was confident that the total Allied war machine would eventually stop Germany, and the Soviets stopped the Wehrmacht some 30 kilometers from Moscow. Over the next 4 years, the Soviet Union repulsed German offences, such as the Battle of Stalingrad and the Battle of Kursk, and pressed forward to victory in large Soviet offences, such as the Vista-Oder offensive. Stalin began to listen to his generals more after Kursk. So there's information in Wiki as a backdrop, but you might be confused why there were some USSR events during that time, 1939 to 45. So that's the historical backdrop of it. In the USSR Championship 1940, a player called Vladimir Andreevich Makagonov was playing white against Mikhail Botvinnik. This guy is quite interesting actually. He was awarded the IM title in 1950 and an honorary GM title in 1987. He played in 8 USSR championships, and he was also very well known as a chess coach. He helped Vasily Smyslov prepare for his 1957 championship against Botvinnik. He trained Vladimir Bagrov and Chepukalisis, and on Botvinnik's recommendation became one of actually young Garry Kasparov's first teachers. So this guy is really quite important, I guess, for the training up of top Soviet players, you could argue. Perhaps he is best known for his contributions to opening theory in the King's Indian defence and the Queen's Gambit. So let's see what happened in this game. We see d4 from Vladimir and Andreevich Makagonov. So d4, Botvinnik plays e6 after c4, this Dutch stone wall, which nowadays it's not so rarely, it's not so frequently rather played, because it seems obviously that it's got potential for dark square weaknesses. It is creating imbalances straight away. It's not so classical as like the Queen's Gambit Declined or the Slav, and it's got a very aggressive pawn structure clearly. And Botvinnik was playing this, and he doesn't mind the dark square weaknesses. In fact, castles, b3 was played here, which statistically is like the most common move, and Botvinnik plays c6. And now routinely, I mean, a lot of players would routinely play bishop a3 nowadays. This is the top move in my book. Just exchange off these light square these dark square bishops, and then try and pursue an outpost campaign or exploiting the dark squares later. But Makagonov plays actually knight e5, much rarer played overall in live book. So let's see what happens. So he's keeping more tension in the position, I guess you could argue. Knight bd7, the knight comes here to d3. It's a very interesting maneuver, because actually this knight could come like this. And I think this might have influenced Kasparov in some games. This kind of maneuver where the knights, both knights are eyeing e5. It's quite a good grip on e5. So queen e8. But here actually you might expect this. No, the knight's actually delayed in deployment to f3. White actually plays now f3, and I'm going to put on an Njigabitsa here. So f3, we see b6, bishop b2, so there's an iron grip on the e5 square here. Bishop b7, now knight d2, as though actually the plan is actually to play e4 next. So forget about eyeing e5. White wants to preserve control of e5, keep a lock on it, and play for e4. That's the plan, it seems. So Botvinnik now reacts with c5, e3, keeping firm control of e5, rook c8, queen e2. So White has a very comfortable looking position here. Actually, in this position, yeah, I mean, it just seems a very comfortable position. D takes was played, B takes, which seems to increase White's potential central control a little bit. But let's see, queen f7. Now knight e5. Not minding potential double pawns. Botvinnik actually played queen e8 here. It looks quite a passive position. If knight takes e5, d takes, this position seems quite pleasant for White, maybe with a5 on the cards coming up and f4 later to support e5 if needed. So okay, we see queen e8, f4 here, and the bishops get exchanged here. Okay, so now c takes, e takes, and now it looks as though c4 is vulnerable, if only to nudge this knight or take it off. Bishop b4, but also e4 control, you know, maybe taking and getting control of e4. So at this stage, yeah, it seems, you know, White's got to be very careful. He plays knight e f3, so getting that knight back. If he had played, let's say he plays this, is that really bad? Well, maybe Black apparently gets a small advantage here in this position. c4 is a bit vulnerable. Engine kind of likes that for Black. So okay, we have that knight retracting. Knight b8. So the knight's trying to maybe control or attack d4 soon. a3, bishop takes, knight takes. Now Botvinnik plays a very interesting move to try and get control of d5, very kind of positionally aggressive. Perhaps more prudent was knight c6. He actually played b5, but it seems entirely a logical move actually. Sorry, it's not even a gambit. It's protected by the queen. So I mean, taking here is actually, you know, Black can either take on b5 or this. This is very good. So yeah, it seems, yeah, Botvinnik, is he positionally outplaying his opponent, getting this d5 control? We see rook ac1, and White gets, for the moment, an isolated queen's pawn now. Queen d7. Has White been outplayed? Mind you, this is a backward pawn. You know, there's swings and roundabouts here. Rook fe1, rook fe8. Now knight e3. As though a liberating move like d5 might be useful at some point. Knight c6, and in fact, in this position, is White faced with passivity? You know, say knight e7 happens, there's going to be a huge knight square blockade on d5. So something has to be done about this. I think Makaganov plays a very practical move. Shienji's top choice. He plays d5. So what is going on here? He's actually liberating the bishop, though. It's got a positional implication straight off the bat. This bishop's not going to be dead behind the isolated queen's pawn, which is totally blockaded. So it keeps some piece play alive. So we see knight takes d5. Now knight c4. Is there any compensation here? Rook b8. Rook c2. Well, it looks as though there's good pressure on black's position. Rook b3. Rook d2. Looks as though there's a pin potentially, which could be dangerous on e8 building up. Rook eb8. This might be a slight slip up, rook eb8. Engine prefers rook b5. Let's see. So why is this a slight slip up? Queen e2. So there's pressure on e6 now. Black's being forced onto the back foot here. So it does seem as though that temporary pawn attack is now causing black some problems. Knight d8 is played. Queen e5. And that dark square bishop with the queen providing a formidable battery there against g7. So the battery is when two or more pieces cooperate, like this for example. Rook 8 b5. And now a really powerful move is played in this position, and Botvinnik will be starting to regret his play maybe a little bit on the allowing white too much dynamic pressure here. I mean, the rooks and the bishop and knight, they seem optimally placed. I know white's a pawn down, but it seems very dynamic, play from white. And this next move is really addressing that. There's a slight looseness of pieces here, particularly d8. Under tactical unification theory recently on this channel, you might try and use this as a basis for finding a move. This slight concern that the queen and knight here, what would you play in this position if I gave you 5 seconds here to pause the video? Okay, a very aggressive dynamic move is played by Makagonov. G4. So what is going on here? You might ask, why isn't the discovered attack against the queen? Well, Botvinnik actually played rook c5. Now, I mean, let's take a simple example. Knight b6. Rook takes d7. No, the knight's pinned. We can't use that because the knight's pinned. Yeah, of course, the d7. So a queen move. Well, any queen move. Surely we've got rook takes d5 like that. Queen c6. Black's pretty tied down. Queen takes g7. So yeah, these are emphasizing slight issues in black's position. He's kind of tied down. The knight's pinned. So he's in a really passive state. And if he takes here, that's an obvious question. Well, maybe he didn't fancy this position because of f5. And what would happen here? Well, white's threatening f takes. And if it takes here, check. Takes, white would end up winning the knight potentially. Just taking here is good. Even stronger apparently is check first. And then just taking the rook here, leaving all these pieces kind of hanging. So yeah, that's pretty strong move, nifty move, g4. So rook c5, Botvinnik was clearly on the defensive. G takes f5. Now, a brilliant move, offering a knight sack, temporary. Rook takes c4, f takes, undermining d5 with that temporary knight sack. Knight takes e6, rook takes d5. Are the rooks crashing through? All of white's pieces are really quite aggressively placed. Queen f7. Now with the queen protecting b2, that's convenient, so white can carry on with operations. f5. Knight f8. Now we see the move bishop d4, a powerful centralizing move, taking the bishop away from there, so white can continue with things like rook d8 to pin the knight without. If he had played rook d8 immediately, then rook g4 check is actually facing white, and this could be nasty backfire. Ouch. Check, queen takes, and then this. So yeah, rook g4 check has to be factored in here. So this move cuts out black's counterplay with rook g4. So we see rook d3. Now this pinning of the knight Rook d2. And now a beautiful little finish actually here at move 40. What would you play here if I gave you 5 seconds to pause the video? Okay, rook takes f8 was played. So one point is, if king takes, then we've got queen b8 check mating pretty soon, in short order, for example, like that, or the rook put in first, but just delaying things. So we see queen takes, queen d5 check. Now if queen f7, then there's rook e8 checkmate. So yeah, white's just won a rook and his bishop up. Queen d8 looking at g5, try and get a mate in 2, naughty. That stopped. f6. Brilliant move. Doesn't it just leave the bishop hanging? Wow, what a move. f6 is the top engine move. This Makagonov is a tactical genius. Why has he just left the bishop hanging? Okay, now one obvious way of black losing is queen takes d4, because here, after takes, well, there's the back row mate, so that's obvious. But rook takes d4 was played. So what's the problem here? What does white play in this position? Really neat final move. If I gave you 5 seconds to pause the video, what would you play here? Okay, just f7. Doesn't matter about the check here. The check's not leading anywhere after king h1. Black can't continue. He's faced with dire threats. If takes here, we just play rook e8 check. So yeah, f7. That's really it. So Botvinnik had to resign here, and this wasn't his only defeat in this tournament. So I think during World War II, yeah, the USSR, the training of chess players, especially Botvinnik, was underway, and he was actually due to play, I believe, Alexander Alekhine. So it was all good training. Well, a match was to be arranged to challenge Alexander Alekhine after World War II, but I don't want to say too much about that. I'm going to research my facts before saying too much about that. We'll look at some other Botvinnik games in other USSR championships and the other key players of the time, including Alexander Kotov, who did that classic book, Think Like a Grandmaster. He did well in one of the key tournaments during World War II, for example. So yeah, it's chess activity on a more local front. For example, British chess was also, of course, severely reduced, and chess was being used as a kind of painkiller and to keep morale up, morale boosting. That's what the chess magazine at the time it kept trying to report on games from those two perspectives. In particular, chess had transformed itself into that role during the war. Okay, comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.